Hi, my name is Michaela McGowan. I'm happy to work with you today to discuss modeling with critical thinking. Bear with me for just a moment as I get my presentation pulled up for you. I'm going to discuss with you a topic that I'm very familiar with. It is second grade math, specifically the lesson for subtraction with regrouping. Some students need critical thinking skills modeled for them to understand how to subtract with regrouping. In this presentation, we're going to explore my 4 assumptions and 3 branching options in my thought process that I have used to help support students in understanding this concept. My first assumption is that students do not have a number sense or understand the difference between numbers. Students are focused on only allowing single digits in each place value. Students do not see a difference in the location of the digits, and students cannot visualize the meaning behind decomposing numbers. A lot of times what I see with my students is that they will see an equation. If there are not enough digits on the top, they will take the number from the bottom and subtract it backwards. Here, I'm going to discuss with you some assumptions that I have, as well as some tools that I have to support the students in building their confidence and their understanding from the foundation up to those with mastery. The first thing that I've seen are that some students do not have a number sense or understand the distance between the numbers. What I like to do for these students is provide a visual. I use a 100s chart put into a plastic page protector with a whiteboard marker. Without the foundational understanding of numbers, these students cannot visualize the grouping or ungrouping of numbers. These students need to master the basics of adding within 100 without regrouping before moving on to more abstract concepts like regrouping. In this case, I will have my student select the number 10, for example, and I will say, we want to take away 2. So my students will circle the number 10, and just like a leapfrog, we will bounce backwards 2 digits. Here, they will see that they land on the number 8. By getting students interacting with the numbers chart, they can start to see and understand that numbers do have value. The next one that I have noticed is that some students are focused on only allowing single units in each place value. By providing tactile tools and math mats, which represent the place value, most students will see that there is enough room for all the units necessary to subtract. Some of my students do not see a difference in the location of the digits. Here, I need to reacquaint my students with the place value. A single 10 or a 110 to them might mean the same as 1-1. So here we need to help our students understand that a 1 unit in the ones place is not the same as 110 unit in the tens place. Some students cannot visualize the meaning behind decomposing numbers. The number 16, for example, is not a visual. It is simply a number. For these students, they need to use counters and 10 frames. By setting up the visual, my students can then tally up the number and then physically cross off the numbers. Branching option number 1, create a visual. The activity that is in the image is each student created 3 mats to represent the ones, tens, and hundreds place. I like to go a step further and make my placemats look like houses. I will actually have my students say, we need to go next door and borrow a 10. Students benefit from interacting with math mats and manipulative textiles to interact with the numbers. This hands-on approach helps students see how digits in the units are represented. Branching option number 2, talking out loud. Using math manipulatives, students will utilize the think aloud method by working with a partner or me. While whole group conversations will occur to teach students that it is possible to fit over 10 units in one spot, it is a misconception for many students that there's only enough space for up to 9 units in one spot, or that they only need enough units to make it bigger than the number on the floor. So here's a poem I like to use. More on the floor, go next door and get 10 more. Now, one of the problems that I do see with some of my students who do struggle with number sense is that they don't understand that getting 10 more does not mean bringing this 8 up to 10. We need to teach our students that adding 10 is really adding 10. There is enough room for the number 18 here. Branching option number 3 is problem solving. Students benefit from interacting with multiple tools and practicing problem solving on their own. By providing students with space and opportunity to make mistakes, they are better inclined to strategize solutions in the future. In turn, they learn to trust their abilities and gain the confidence they need to move on to more challenging math concepts. So one of the strategies that I actually have used, and here's an example of what I have, is writing out and color coding each number. What I start with is just simply writing out my number. In this case, I have 200, take away 152. I will have my students start in the ones place and circle the number. Is there enough on top, or do I need to ungroup to get 10 ones? In this case, we can see that we do need to ungroup. So I will have them draw an arrow over to where they are going to get it. But in this case, and this is what sometimes throws my students off, there are no 10s. So this concept can be very challenging, and why it's so important to not worry about getting a lot of equations through, but really take the time with each individual equation and focus on the long drawn out steps. Before you know it, the students are going to know this secondhand, and they can go ahead and answer so many questions. In this case, when I have students that are learning the actual steps, I usually have them go through 2 or maybe 3 steps. This is a lot for some students. So what we'll do here is we go next door and we see there are no 10s. So our 10 goes next door to the hundreds. And we say, well, do we need to ungroup to get 10 10s? And we say yes. So here we start to go backwards and we take every single step. No longer do we have 200s, we have 100. Now we have 10 10s. For some of my students, I will actually have them draw it out. I'll say, show me what this looks like. We've got a square, a stick, and one. I want to actually see those sticks getting crossed off and those ones getting put in here. Once we have it all set up and we know it, we now have 100, 9 10s, and 10 ones, we can actually solve the equation. And I get the students very excited. Now we can solve it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I do want you to remember that subtracting with regrouping can be challenging for some students. You may see behavioral challenges. I know I have. Off-task behavior, disruptions, students emotionally shutting down. By keeping the class environment positive, teachers and educators can take the threat out of math. Not every student will get it the first time, but everyone has the ability to practice. Also remember, we're not looking for the quantity of how many problems they're solving. We want them to understand the foundation. If your student can only tolerate working through all those steps for just one problem, that's okay. Keep that positive, and before you know it, the student will be able to understand how to subtract with regrouping. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great day.